The Fractured Mind, A Tale of the Soryo Siblings. Prologue. The floating city of minds above the azure sea, where sky and consciousness intertwined, Kaibara floated as a jewel of psychic mastery. Here, the greatest minds of Aurelia wove the strands of fate itself, ruling not through brute force, but through sheer mental dominion. Every wall, every bridge, and every path shimmered with blue ceruleus energy, pulsing with the thoughts of those who walked them. The ethereal council sat at the city's highest spires, their minds tethered to the fabric of reality itself, watching, listening, controlling. Among them, 3 children of the Soryo bloodline, descendants of scholars, warriors, and visionaries, walked the path toward destiny. Renshiro Soryo, the eldest, was a prodigy of the Thought Blade Order, a warrior who saw the future before it happened. Meiyu Soryo, the middle child, was a seer, her mind forever shifting between what was, what is, and what could be. Naomi Soryo, the youngest, rejected the destiny chosen for her, seeking a world beyond the council's control, where free will was stronger than fate. And so, in a city where minds shaped reality, their thoughts began to diverge. The Fractured Mind, A Tale of the Soryo Siblings. Chapter 1. The Skybound Trial. The floating city of Kaibara rested in quiet anticipation. Above the azure sea, where unseen forces dictated the movement of the world, the arena of thought hung in perfect stillness. Below, mist churned, thick with untapped will, whispering of those who had fallen into its depths, souls lost to forgotten realities. Today, the arena was alive with minds. At its center stood Renshiro Soryo, heir to the Soryo name. He was 19 years old, a prodigy among the Thought Blade Order, trained in the art of predictive combat. The whispers among the scholars were already calling him a future leader of the Saiku Council, destined to wield his mind as a weapon for the state. But today, his future was uncertain. Across from him, Tenzan Raithai, his opponent, stood still as the mist beneath them. A duel of perception, a battle of thought, a contest where will determine reality itself. And yet, Renshiro had already seen his own failure. The vision had come to him in fragments over the last few nights. Tenzan moving before Renshiro could react. A strike landing with precision unnatural even for a psychic duel. The cold finality of defeat. His visions were never wrong. So why am I still standing here? The battle begins. The duel commenced in silence. Renshiro moved first, faster than thought, his blade forming in his hands, an extension of his mind, cutting through the air with the force of certainty. But Tenzan was already there, not dodging, not parrying, but already responding. His weapon met Renshiro's before the strike was even made, an impossible reaction time. The battle unfolded exactly as Renshiro had foreseen. Every strike, every shift in stance, Tenzan was already one step ahead. It was not prediction. It was as if his opponent had already lived this moment before. Renshiro clenched his teeth, frustration boiling beneath his focused exterior. He could see seconds into the future, but for the first time, it felt meaningless. Was this an illusion? A trick of perception? Or had the Saiku Council rigged the duel itself? Doubt crept in, and doubt was a crack in the mind, a crack Tenzan exploited. A sharp psychic pulse disrupted Renshiro's thought, breaking his hold over his weapon for the briefest second. It was enough. Tenzan struck, sending Renshiro hurtling back, skidding across the levitating stone platform. The duel was over. For the first time, Renshiro had lost, and in that loss, he saw the path of his future begin to shift. Chapter 2. The Trickster's Gamble. Renshiro sat alone in the empty floating library, the walls lined with knowledge that stretched beyond the physical, layered with whispers of history and thoughts of the past. He was cheating. The thought had haunted him since the duel ended. He had spent his entire life training for absolute mental dominance. He knew how far a psychic could push perception. No one could react before a vision even manifested, unless someone removed the vision altogether, a voice said from the darkness. Renshiro turned sharply. There, perched on one of the levitating shelves, was Naomi Soryun. At only 10 years old, his youngest sister had a mind far sharper than she let on, and she was smiling like a thief who had gotten away with the grandest heist of her life. You, Renshiro muttered, realization dawning. You did something. Naomi tilted her head. And if I did? You tampered with the duel. She hopped down, crossing her arms. Tenzan wasn't fighting fair. He had a linked mind-seer, feeding him the moments ahead. That's why he already knew how the battle would play out. Renshiro narrowed his eyes. That's forbidden. So is what I did. There it was, the weight of her words. Renshiro exhaled. Tell me. Naomi's smirk deepened. I cut his link. Renshiro stiffened. Right before your final strike, she continued. Just a tiny snip. 1 second of real uncertainty, and that was enough. It was true. Tenzan had faltered, just for an instant, and that had changed everything. You should be thanking me, Naomi said, rocking on her heels. You would have lost otherwise. Renshiro's hands clenched at his sides. That's not how victory works. Then why did you let me do it? He didn't answer, because deep down he knew, if Naomi hadn't interfered, he would have lost completely, and he hated that he wasn't as angry as he should be. Naomi turned away, heading toward the exit. Next time, just win on your own. It'll make things easier for both of us. For the first time in his life, Renshiro let a crime go unpunished. For the first time, he protected a lie. And for the first time, he wondered how deep that lie would take him. Chapter 3. The Omen of the Rift. Mayu Soryun was no stranger to visions, but this one felt different. In her dreams, she had glimpsed shadows of the past, whispers of the future, fragments of moments yet to come. But they had always been hazy, a blur of possibilities shifting with every new choice made. This time, however, she knew. This was not a mere glimpse. This was certainty. The fractured city. She walked through the streets of Kaibara, but it was not the city she knew. The bridges that once connected the floating islands were collapsing, their once graceful arcs now shattered. Buildings, once crafted with psychic precision, were dissolving into dust, as if reality itself had forgotten them. She turned her gaze upward, toward the sky. And there it was. A rift in the heavens, black and endless, splitting across the sky like a wound in the fabric of existence itself. Through it, Mayu could see shifting landscapes, places that should not exist, versions of Soryo that had been erased or had never come to be. She took a step forward, and the world around her distorted. Her breath caught, because she was not alone. The unraveling war before her stood two figures, both facing each other on the highest spire of the Saiku Council's chambers. The first, a warrior clad in ceremonial gold and deep indigo robes, his hands gripping a mind-forged blade. His stance was steady, but his face was empty, his silver eyes cold, detached, distant. Renshiro, her older brother, but not the brother she knew. His presence was a void, as if all that had once made him human had been stripped away, leaving only a soldier of the council's will. He raised his blade, not in self-defense, but as an executioner. Facing him was a second figure, hair wild, psychic energy crackling around her like a living storm. Her scarf was torn, her breathing ragged, but her eyes burned with unshakable defiance. Naomi, her younger sister, but not the sister she had once grown up with. The world around them shuddered, as if struggling to decide which of them was real, which of their truths would shape the future. Mayu's heart pounded as she took a step closer, but something stopped her. A presence, something far older than them all. The whispering rift Mayu turned and came face to face with the rift of veiled truths. It was no longer a distant wound in the sky. It was alive, shifting and pulsing before her like a living thing, and something was inside it. She could hear it. A voice. No. Voices. Hundreds, maybe thousands, all speaking at once, overlapping in a language that made her mind ache. Some voices were desperate, pleading for release. Others were cold, watching. Then, one voice rose above the others, deep, echoing, and it spoke her name. Mayu Soryun. She stumbled backward, her breath catching in her throat. The rift knew her. It had been waiting for her. Her mind was bombarded with images, a world where Renshiro never existed, a world where Naomi ruled Kaibara from the shadows, a world where the Saiku Council had fallen, and something far worse had taken its place. A world where she had stepped into the rift and never returned. The possibilities overwhelmed her, pressing into her skull with unbearable weight. Then, the rift reached out. A hand, formed of nothing but pure shifting void, grasped at her consciousness. Mayu screamed and woke, gasping for air, her body drenched in sweat. She sat up, trembling, her heart pounding in her chest. The silence of her room felt wrong, unreal. The rift had touched her, and she knew, deep in her soul, that it had not let go. Epilogue. A war unwritten. The night after her vision, Mayu did not sleep. The city of Kaibara was unchanged, the bridges still intact, the sky still whole. But she knew better. The fractures had already begun. Renshiro, her brother, would soon be faced with a truth that no warrior could fight with a blade. Naomi, her sister, had already begun to walk the path of rebellion, unknowingly marching toward a war that had not yet begun. And Mayu, she was now caught between them, the only one who had seen the future, yet could not change it, because the rift of veiled truths had chosen her, and something was watching, waiting, whispering. Mayu felt it, even now, a presence at the edge of her mind, a reality that did not belong, a question she had no answer for. Who is rewriting the future, and more importantly, is it too late to stop them?